Assalamu alaikum. Yes, we are live on YouTube. Inshallah, we can start the class.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة لأهل التقوى واليقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرض روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام الدين. أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله. First of all, I would like to pay my condolences to all the listeners for the Shahadat of Imam Al-Qasim alayhi salam. And as the day has gone by, but also Wafat of Hazrat Abu Talib. Salam alayhi. Lesson number 29, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, everyone?
Yes.
Yes. And the topic of the lesson is Kasrate Paymbaran. Why did Allah send so many messengers? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent, and He will talk about this in this lesson, that it was based on some traditions. That we have a few traditions that say 124,000 prophets or Anbiya, Nabi, Nabi. And then 313 of those were Rasul. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent 124,000 Anbiya, Nabi, and 313 Mursalin Rasul. What is the difference between Nabi and Rasul? He's going to talk about that as well. He says, why so many? So basically the prophets are sent for the guidance of the people, or to guide them and for their prosperity in this world and the hereafter. In this world, so they have peace of mind and good life, Islamic life or godly life, and the hereafter that they have salvation, they have paradise. But Allah, why has Allah sent so many books? So 4 books, 100 sahifas, booklets, psalms, booklets. And then so many prophets. Well, number one, he says that because the prophets and these messengers from God, they were not limited to a place. And in olden times, the communication was limited. So therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent so many. So for every area, wherever there was population, and then people were misguided, he would send prophets and messengers to guide them. Secondly, it did not seem appropriate that, he would have one prophet who would live forever and he would guide all the people. So people, even prophets died, they lived a normal life, and they would live and they would die, and new messengers and prophets would replace them after them. Another reason is that the conditions and the demands of different times and different places were different. Yes. So as the time changed, the demands changed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent different messengers. And then he sent them rules and sometimes changed those rules because the demands or the requirements were different. Certain things never changed. We'll talk about them in a minute. And then many of the messages were not sent for, they were specific for certain places, and they were not for all times and for all parts of the world, for all human beings. And the fourth reason for sending so many prophets, because when sometimes the prophets delivered a message, many of their followers changed and altered their messages. And so that's why Allah needed to send new prophets, because the changes required that the message was renewed. For example, in the time of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, he delivered oneness of God, and after him, when he was raised to the paradise or the heavens, his followers changed the whole idea of the Tawheed into the at least Trinity. Little things like that happened. So Allah needed to send prophets one after the other. And then the requirements of our ibadat, the leadership, social issues. The social issues changed even in our lifetime. We can see 20 years ago, the problems were different to the problems today. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent, certain things were just general rules, universal laws, telling the truth, not stealing, not murdering, But there are certain things that, there are requirements that change. And then you need new prophets and new messengers. And so this is just a general outline of why do we need so many messengers. But the more important thing is that we need to verify or confirm the message of all the prophets. It may have changed, but they were right at the time, and those were the laws. And the Holy Prophet and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said the same thing about other prophets. Musaddiqan lima. They confirmed. Yes, tasdeeq is to confirm. They did not say, no, everyone was wrong and I'm now right. None of the messengers came and said, okay, the previous ones were wrong and I'm right. No, they said they were all good. They were right. And now I have come to reaffirm or to preach again. So they may have changed certain things. He said, yes, but now, for example, previous prophets allowed certain things, like Hazrat Isa said, Moses told you not to do bad. I am telling you not to even think of bad things. So it is not contradictory. It's just sometimes the requirements are different. Okay. So they were never nullifying the previous teachings. They always reconfirmed the teachings. The teachings of all the prophets were based on wisdom, and human intellect accepted it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may have given them rules how to govern the people, how to judge, like judiciary, how to not judge between, like judge the people, but, how to just, like to establish justice between the people. So the simple outline to remember is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent all of these prophets for wisdom. Based on the wisdom, Allah told them to guide the people. So then it talks about, 124,000 prophets based on the tradition. And these prophets were given different titles. So what are the titles given to these prophets? These divine leaders were given Nabi, meaning the one who is guided by God. Munzir or Nazir, warner. They were Bashir or Mubashir, givers of good, glad tidings. And Allah has called them Salihin. They were the best of the people, or they were most pious people. Mukhlasin, chosen by God. Rasul, meaning they were messengers. So these are all the different titles given to the prophets. Now, there are two main words. Nabi is, some say it is from Naba, someone who has a special or important message. That's someone who is Nabi. So it could be from Naba, Surah Naba, Surah number 78. Yeah, Naba, meaning great news. So the one who carries a great message or important message. Or it could be from Nabu, not Naba, but Nabu. So if it is from Nabu, then it is derived from, then it means holding an outstanding position. Someone who holds a high position or outstanding position. Yes. And Rasul, and in English, usually we translate Nabi as prophet and Rasul as messenger. And Rasul is someone who has, someone who's been sent. You know. Now, Atullah Misbah argues that some people have argued that Nabi is someone who receives a message and Rasul is someone who is delivered. He said, well, in the Holy Quran, we have sometimes Rasul and Nabiya. So Nabi has come after Rasul. If it was someone who receives just a message, then Allah specific comes after the general, general. Yes. So if so he said it doesn't make sense. Secondly, then he argues that yes, some traditions mention that Nabi is someone who receives a message in his dream and only hears the message when he is awake and doesn't see the angel. But Rasul is someone who also sees the angel when awake or in sleep or awake. Yes. So these are the things to remember. But anyway, he says that we may not completely understand the difference based on some of the traditions between Nabi and Rasul, but we do know that all messengers from God, all the prophets from God are Nabi, but they're not all Rasul. So they're all Nabi, but they're not all Rasul. Some of them are Rasul. 313 are Rasul. And very few, we only have proof in the Holy Quran for Hazrat Ibrahim and the Holy Prophet that they are Imam, okay, which is a higher stature. Okay. Now, Ulul Azm, prominent prophets, or the messengers with strong will, Ulul Azm, literally meaning a prominent prophet. In the Holy Quran, Surah Ahqaf, verse number 35, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned 5 messengers to be Ulul Azm. Hazrat Nuh, alayhi salam, Hazrat Ibrahim, alayhi salam, Hazrat Musa, Hazrat Isa, and the Holy Prophet of Islam, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, alayhi salatu wasalam. These are the 5 Ulul Azm. What are the Ulul Azm? Well, the Holy Quran mentions that they have a lot of patience, they're very steadfast, they're very outstanding messengers. But the main thing is that they have a book or booklet and new Sharia. They have independent Sharia. They have their own set of laws. And the other prophets in their time are their followers, and even after them until the new Sharia comes, and they follow them. So everyone who came after, all the prophets that came after Hazrat Nuh were followers of Hazrat Nuh until Hazrat Ibrahim came. And all the prophets and messengers were followers of Hazrat Ibrahim's Sharia or set of laws. Until Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came, his Sharia is, or his set of laws are till the Day of Judgment. They are, and he is Khatamun Nabiyyin, the seal of all the prophets. He's the only seal of prophets. And his messenger is eternal and universal and forever. But can there be prophets at the same time? Yes, we do have proofs in the Holy Quran. So we have Hazrat Lut and Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam at the same time. Hazrat Musa and Harun and Shu'aib and others at the same time. Hazrat Yahya and Isa at the same time. But there can be Hazrat Zakaria and Imran. So there are many, many prophets at the same time. Now there are a number of points he says for us to remember at the end of lesson number 29. He says, number 1, all the prophets reconfirmed, reassured the message of the previous prophets. Yes. So they confirmed, yes, the previous were truthful, and they gave the good news of the prophets that were coming after them. So most of them, all, if not all, then most would mention the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as the last messenger who's coming. And also they would mention, for example, Hazrat Yusuf mentioned that there will be Hazrat Musa coming, and Hazrat Musa said Hazrat Isa, and the last, so they all mentioned the prophets after. So the people would know coming, yes, previous prophet had mentioned that there'll be a prophet with these qualities coming. Number 2, None of the prophets ever asked for any compensation for their message. They did not say that, okay, pay us for it. And the only person who asked for a compensation was the last messenger on behalf of all the prophets. And that was to love his family. And that was not for his personal reasons, but even that was beneficial for the people. Okay. Point number 3 says that some of the messengers and prophets had more duties, not to just deliver the message, but also to establish governments, to follow legislation in the people and have judiciary. Yes. So they had more than just delivering the message. But most of the prophets, like Hazrat Dawud and Sulaiman, but most of the prophets, their duty was to deliver the message. And the last point, he says that, yes, there are jinns in this world, the jinnis, yes. And they are another creation which has responsibility. Like human beings, we have responsibilities, obligations and forbidden things. And likewise, the jinns. And the jinns cannot be seen by normal human beings, but they could see and hear the message of the prophets. And we have proofs that, they had to follow Hazrat Musa, Nabi Moses, and Hazrat Rasul Khuda Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And the ones who did not follow, followed Iblis, Shaitan, and they continue to be kuffar or disbelievers. Okay, that's lesson number 29. Lesson number 30. How was the relationship between the people and the prophets? Let's see if we can just finish this lesson today, and then we will see if we can do lesson number 31, which is about the Holy Prophet, and then about Islam, Quran, and all of those. Next 5 lessons will be all about the Holy Prophet, Islam, Quran, Khatamiyat, the last messenger, and everything. Okay? So lesson number 30. When the Holy Quran mentions the previous prophets, it mentions, briefly how great they were and how brilliantly they delivered the message to other people. And they did not allow the people to change the teachings. And so the Holy Quran has said, talks about the people's sometimes objection or disobedience to the prophets. Many people followed, and many people did not follow. Yes. Many people were obedient to the messengers. Many people were disobedient. Many people left the deviances that they followed when the prophets preached to them. Many people did not leave the deviance. And many of the messengers came to confront disbelief, polytheism, like people who would do shirk, associates with God, and other deviances in their character, in their practices, like when they were buying and selling, they were deviant, or they were deviant in their conduct or their personal lives, or, like all sorts of. Many of them do not have direct connection to the belief system, but many do have direct connection with the belief system. Most important thing is that they all delivered the oneness of God, that there is only one God. All messengers said that there is only one God. So they all delivered that there is only one God. And Imam Ali says that, if there was another God, to his son Hazrat Muhammad, and that if there was another God other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then then he would also send you his messenger. There is only one God, and the biggest proof is that all messengers said, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah. So they all delivered Tawheed, oneness of God. They all talked about the hereafter, that you will have a day of judgment when you will be held accountable. But sometimes the people basically did not admit. So what did they have? They had sometimes idols. They worshipped idols. They disbelieved, they did not practice. Yes. And the prophets, alayhi salam, continuously stop people from idol worship, following the shaitan, to not oppress, to not sin. So they told them not to sin, not to oppress others, and stop, certain sins they clarified. Sometimes people were too busy in their worldly lives, too busy in their worldly enjoyments, that they cared not, they did not care on the preaching of the prophets. And many times most of the time, it took a long time for the prophets to deliver and convince and make the people obey them, follow them, or follow the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it would be very rare that everyone in the society would become followers of the prophets. Many would oppose, fight, confront the prophets, even kill them sometimes. Yes? Why did the people oppose the prophets? Well, there are many, many reasons for it. The biggest reason, he says, people followed their evil desires. We have our own evil desires. We have a high enough sunny, we follow our evil desire. Yes. So, and then sometimes arrogance was one of the reasons that people did not follow the prophets. And especially the people with power, with wealth, with different forms of powers in the society. So sometimes people were known to be intellectuals or something, and they did not submit sometimes. Well, if I submit, then he's more intelligent and more learned, he's from God. So people had arrogance of different types. And sometimes the third reason is they had prejudices. Yes. Race and different things that they did not accept. And one of the other reasons was securing their own economical positions. Yes. So they had wealth, and a lot of the prophets came and said, you have to pay taxes to help the poor people. A lot of the people didn't like that. Why should I help the poor people? Slavery would finish. Many people were very wealthy, and they had arrogance because of wealth, so they did not submit to the prophets. So there are many reasons for people to not follow the prophets. Okay, everyone? A lot of the people, just because of ignorance, did not follow. They were just, why should I believe in one God? Why should I follow? Why should I stop drinking? Why should I stop? So all sorts of things you had to leave. So a lot of the people, just because of ignorance. So ignorance was the main factor for people not to follow. So all of these different factors played a role in people not obeying and following the path of Allah through the message. So now, how did the people confront the prophets? Yes. So there are many prophets and messengers. He says that, well, number one, a lot of the people just basically ridiculed the prophets. Yes. You all understand that? So they made fun of them, ridiculed them. Make fun of them. Yes. And say that these prophets are not worth anything, so they're less than us. So this was a common thing: ridicule, make fun, tahqir. So this was factor number one. So factor number one is contempt, is it? Factor number two, slander and unjust accusations. Slander and unjust accusations. So a lot of the people said, oh, they are lying, or they are idiots, don't follow them, or they are crazy. Yeah, they are madmen. Others said, no, people said he's mad, crazy, the Holy Prophet, and others. Many said, Asatir al-Awwalin, these are just fabricated things he's brought from past. We don't want to So a lot of them, slander and unjust accusations. Third factor, how did the people treat the prophets? Dispute and chicanery. Yeah, mujadala mughalata. So a lot of the people came and started debating the prophets and disputed them and started fighting with them and said, no, we will not believe in you. The prophets used to always give good reasoning. So they would not dispute and argue, but they would give good reason. Yes? So if the people debated with the prophets, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بِمَوْعِظَةٍ حَسَنَةٍ, good reasoning. So they gave good reasoning, good debates to counter those arguments. And they always try to be logical. So even the weakest of the people would understand. So the Anbiya alayhi salam worked very hard to confront the people, but the people always had some sort of issues against it. Factor number 4, is it? Yeah. That was threats and allurement. Yes. Tahdid and tatmi'. So a lot of the people basically, threatened the Prophet. We will kill you, we will stone you to death, we will burn you alive. And sometimes they did those things. It's not just that they threatened, they actually did kill the Prophet, stone them to death, burn them alive, cut them in half. Yes? How else did they confront? And number 5, he says, with violence and murder. So a lot of the people actually carried out a lot of violence against the prophets, alayhi salam, and murdered them. A lot of the prophets have, like Hazrat Yahya was murdered. So many were murdered. Yes? Now, some of the general rules in the end of the lesson number 30, Atullah Bayezi argues, what are Allah's general rules for managing the society? Some divine ways of managing society. Yes? Well, the main purpose of sending the prophets was for the people to recognize God, like to know God, messengers, prophets, and the hereafter. And, and for them to practice so they can live a good life as human beings. Yes? وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. All prophets said, we have no responsibility but to deliver the message. Yes? So the prophets, Allah's main thing was that, so they deliver the message. Whatever problems or issues that people had, the prophets would come and deliver the message. And then Allah helped them in guiding based on the needs of the time. So in the magic time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, okay, this is how you deal. In the time of Hazrat Isa and Hazrat Musa's time, people had magic. In Hazrat Isa's time, people had medicine. So whatever they were advanced in, Allah would give special advancement to his messengers so they can actually prove to the people that they are prophets, and then they would confront the objection and guide the people with reasoning, with logic, wisdom. Yes? And to wake up people from the heedlessness that they were in, like they had become very heedless to the hereafter and they had become completely worldly people. And it happens all the time. How did this all affect the people? Well, not always people listened to those, and many people went into oppression and materialistic and enjoyment, like all sorts of worldly things they did. And the Holy Quran describes that their hearts had become hardened, meaning when your heart is hard, not that it is physically hard, but meaning you do not accept the divine message. That's why it is called hard-heartedness. Okay? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to soften them, sent them trials, tribulations, so they would become soft and then listen to the prophets. And over the time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continuously sent message one after the other. And when the people did not listen, sometimes Allah sent punishments and adab, wrath from God would come in punishing the people. So this is basically the divine ways of managing the society. Okay, so let me start lesson number 31, which is about the Holy Prophet of Islam. Now, all previous prophets came and told their people that there will be a last messenger coming. And these are called Basharat. So they all gave glad tidings, not only just of paradise and salvation, but also about the last messenger, that you will have a last messenger who will deliver, who will come as the last messenger. So they all came, and if you read the Old Testament, the New Testament, they all have some sort of message about the last messenger. Hazrat Nuh, Hazrat Ibrahim, Hazrat Musa, Hazrat Isa, wasalam. They all talked about the last messenger. And the last messenger, when he came, so there were messages in the previous books, like in Torah, in Injil. Even though they were converted, they were changed, but even then, still, you can look at, some of the references that our scholars have given, and I have also talked about them in many of my majalis. So parakaliti, or farkalita, parakaliti, yes, in Hebrew, that was the word used about the Holy Prophet, and that translates into Arabic as Ahmad, and his mother had named him Ahmad. So, although the previous books are changed and altered, but even then, sometimes you can find proofs in Torah, and the first, what do you call it, Safar Hedaish. Let me look at the English. Yes. Yes. So, well, he hasn't given the references. I wish he had given the translator had given the English references. So, each one of them has English translations. English translations may not have the same wording as the Arabic translation. But anyway, so a lot of the previous books were changed. Like Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, so they said, they've mentioned about Hazrat Yaqub Jacob, that he had a wrestling match with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. God and Jacob had a wrestling match where Hazrat Yaqub Jacob defeated God. And likewise, so they have other things, in those which, obviously have been changed. Or for example, Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam, they have related drinking and marrying his general's wife, and he sent him off so he could die and so he could marry his wife. Those sort of things. The Hazrat Ali salam has said that these are objectionable and unacceptable. Or like Hazrat Lut salam for other sins, and Hazrat Musa salam for that he has anyway, so they have related a lot of false code to many of the prophets and messengers. And Hazrat Isa salam, in his if you look at in the New Testament, a lot of the things have been changed. And it allows to drink alcohol. While we have that all prophets that came, they all emphasized, they all had some sort of system of prayer. So they all brought in namaz, salat, some sort of system of prayer. How was it? It wasn't necessarily like ours, but they had some sort of prayer. They had some sort of zakat system, meaning giving in the way of Allah, charity system. They all had some sort of system for their ibadah, pilgrimage or something. And they all stopped from certain sins. for example, fornication, adultery, from homosexuality, from drinking alcohol, from other, like, so they had stopped, all prophets had stopped lying, murder, theft, robbery. So all prophets stopped from that. Yes. But many other people changed. The Jews and Christians and others have changed these people. Now came the time of the Holy Prophet, who, as the Isa had come, he was raised to the heavens. And then Nabi describes how Allah chose the Holy Prophet and sent him. Now, let me read from Nahj al-Balagha, sermon number 187. Allah sent the prophets when the mission of other prophets had stopped and the people were in slumber for a long time. Evil was raising its head. All matters were in disruption and in the flames of war, while the world was devoid of brightness and full of open deceitfulness. Its leaves had turned yellow and there was absence of hope about its fruit, while the water had gone underground. The minarets of guidance had disappeared and signs of destruction had appeared. It was stern to its people and frowned in the face of its seeker. Its fruit was vice and its food was a carcass. Its inner dress was fear and its outer cover was the sword. So this is the the evil time and the bad times when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose the Holy Prophet and said, now I've sent Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him in the time when people were burning their daughters alive, people were, so much corruption in the society. And then Allah said, now Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam must rise and confront idol worship, killing, murder, theft, daughters being buried alive, stopping the battles going on between the people. For all of those, he sent the last messenger. He said, rise. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent his last messenger. And he said, your message will be eternal, universal. And he sent him the Holy Quran to challenge the people that this is going to be till the day of judgment, unchanged, and oneness of God he delivered. And all the previous prophets were right from Adam, and he's the last messenger. And then he told the people, to pray, to fast, to pilgrimage, and all of those little things. Yes. In lesson number 27, we proved that, there are three ways of proving the prophethood of a prophet. Yes. And one of them is, firstly, by studying the way of life of the apostle through dependable sources. Secondly, through the prophecies of the previous prophets. And thirdly, through the performance of miracles. And the Holy Prophet performed all three. So he remained in the lives of the people in Mecca, and they saw him live between them for 40 years, and they all used to call him Sadiq, and I mean the truthful and the trustworthy. Yes. He was of good character, successful businessman, a very pure and clean person, a very organized person. Yes. Secondly, he had news from the previous prophets. So many prophets had given news about him, Jews, Christians, and other people who believed, Zoroastrians, that the last messenger will come. And thirdly, through miracle, he brought in the Holy Quran and other many, many miracles he showed to the people to prove that he is the last messenger. Okay, everyone? Well, the Holy Quran very clearly says, أَوَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُمْ آيَةً أَنْ يَعْلَمَهُ عُلَمَاءُ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلِ. This is in Surah Shu'ara, ayat number 197. Allah says, is it not a sign for them that the learned children of Israel recognize it? So Allah has sent so many signs. Yes. And the Jews and Christians noticed those signs because a lot of the Christians were previously Jews. They were converts from Judaism. Yes, so they were children of Israel. So just the children of Israel are not just Jews. A lot of the children of Israel converted to Islam as well. So they had converted previously to Christianity, and a lot of them are now Muslims. There was a television show where they were bringing in different schools of thought, like different religions, Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And the biggest debate was between this Jewish girl and a Muslim boy. They were, like disputing each other the most. And then they did a DNA test, and they said, the closest DNA between any of you is between the Jewish girl and the Muslim boy. And the Jewish girl started crying in tears. He said, how? He said, it is true. And his forefathers must have been Jews. He said, I don't care what my forefathers were. I'm a Muslim and I'm going to remain a Muslim. So, so a lot of the Muslims today were previously Jews or Christians. Yes. But today we have, about 2 billion Muslims. Obviously, most of these are born Muslims, but previously they were Jews, Christians, and Hindus, Sikhs, and all other religions. Yes. Very few are from the progeny of the Holy Prophet. So the Holy Prophet ﷺ used all three. So his character, he proved amongst the people. He had news from the previous books and prophets. So many told their people that the last messenger will be coming, and he will establish a government in Medina. And then he brought in Quran and many, many, many other miracles to prove that he is the last messenger. And the Torah and the Bible, the Psalms of David, all books were either have been lost or they have been altered and tampered with and changed. While the Quran for 14 centuries remains unchanged even now. In Britain, you have got some of the oldest copies of the Holy Quran from 12 centuries back, 13 centuries back. And some say even in Birmingham, they had a copy of the Holy Quran which they took to Oxford. They said this may be the oldest copy of the Holy Quran dating back to the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they're not publishing it because the challenge of the Muslims will come out true, that the Quran has remained unchanged. And we have copies from Ali Islam written by his hand and other Imams, Raza Islam, exactly the same. When we published, so this is the biggest challenge. I have done 3 lessons today as quickly as I could. And next week we will talk about the Holy Quran and other proofs. So we will try and do 4 lessons and finish off Quran, Khatamiyat, and so let me quickly just talk about some of the lesson number 32. So the biggest miracle of the Holy Prophet was Quran, which still remains. And so, the times, the need of the time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Hazrat Musa 2 miracles. His hand, he would place into pocket, take it out, there was light coming out of it. His staff, he would throw on the ground, it would turn into a python. That was the 2 miracles of Hazrat Musa. In Hazrat Isa, he had the hand, he would touch the born deaf, blind, or dumb, mute, and they would start speaking or start seeing or start hearing. Yes, he would hold the dead and he would say, "Qum bi rabbik, rise with the permission of thy Lord," and they would become alive. Because in his time there was medicine, not allopathy, probably some other medicine, which was very advanced. So the need in his time was of curing the diseases or illnesses or things that they could not cure. And Hazrat Isa did. In the time of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, the Arabs were very proud of 2 things. Their language, they said, we are Arabs, the others are Ajam. They are not non-Arabic speaking. So everyone is either Arabic speaking or non-Arab. And the second, they're sword fighting. So Allah gave them 2 miracles. Quran to confront and answer their Arabic, and Ali with that to confront their sword fighting. So Ali has no answer. Now, a miracle is something we said which is extraordinary, which cannot be replaced. It is not against wisdom, and it is beyond human beyond human power. Yes, and it comes with the challenge, and that this is the messenger of God. He is a prophet to prove his, divineness, that he is from God, and that he is. And that his miracle is irreplaceable. So with all of these, the Holy Prophet ﷺ brought in the Holy Quran and said, the Quran is a living miracle. It is a challenge till the day of judgment. No one can bring a book like the Holy Quran. Now, so the Arabs obviously tried answering it, and the Holy Quran said, "Fa'tu bimithli hadha al-Quran." bring just one book like the Holy Quran. قل لئن اجتمعت الإنس والجن على أن يأتوا بمثل هذا القرآن لا يأتون بمثله ولو كان بعضهم لبعض ظهيرا. So in Surah Bani Israel, Surah Isra, Surah number 17, verse number 88, Allah says, if say to them that if all the human beings and jinns got together to bring one book like the Holy Quran, they will not be able to bring a book like the Holy Quran, even if they helped each other. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easier and said, bring in fa'tu bi ashri suwarin mithli. Just bring 10 chapters like that chapter. And then Allah said, fa'tu bi suratin mithli. Just bring one chapter. In Surah Baqarah, verse number 23, Allah says, just bring one chapter like the chapters of the Holy Quran. And they could not. And that's when they started fighting. So how is the Holy Quran a miracle? Why is it a miracle? So the Arabs were saying poetry in their time, and their poetry was meaningless, just words coming together, describing absurd concepts. Yes, no depth, no meaning, nothing to think about or ponder, nothing deep, just words. And came the Holy Quran using the same 27 letters, compiling 114 chapters, over 6,000 verses. And it talked about, in every language there is prose and poems, nasr and nazm. Quran, Arabic has three: nazm, nasr, and Arabic and Quran. So they have prose, poems, and Quran. Quran is beyond prose and poems. Yes, and it had all sorts of meanings. It had tawheed, it had the ma'ad, it had prophethood, way of life, teachings, methods. Like for example, a king must have described his dream, that I had this dream, and the 7 cows are eating stuff. But the Holy Quran just put it in one verse, describing the whole of that incident in just one verse. So Quran is a challenge in fasahat and balaghat, in eloquency and rhetoric. And yet it has the deepest of the meanings. The Arabs had a law in that time from the Jews about, an eye for an eye, and, like nose for nose, and life for life, or something like that. And the Holy Quran came and said, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. O people of wisdom, there is life for you in qisas, in the criminal law that Islam had given. Yes. So in such a short verse, it said everything. And then even if you just take out Ya ulil albab and everything, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ. In qisas there is hayat, life, or al-qisas, hayat. So very little words and so many meanings, so much depth. That's how the Holy Quran is the biggest living book. Inshallah, next week I will describe more about the Holy Quran. I will now quickly answer some of the questions. So we did start lesson number 32. So inshallah, we will finish lesson number 32 next week. If you have any questions, then I'll try and answer those. Otherwise, inshallah, we will cover those next week. Lesson number 32, 33, 34, and 35, I'll try and do. So then we will have Nabuwwat finish as well. So we have done Tawheed and Adl, and inshallah, next week we will finish Nabuwwat. And today is lesson number 13. And next week, lesson number 14, we will finish Nabuwwat, and 15 and 16, 2 lessons we will do Imam. And then inshallah, we will finish this series. Any questions?
Just one has come through now. After the Pope's visit to Iraq, my son is confused why these people don't convert to Islam. It seems as if they accept the prophethood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what stops them from converting?
Okay, there are many things that stop them. Lay people, the do's and don'ts of Islam. People with power, they would lose their power. So they may be leaders in their own communities, and once they accept or submit, they will lose everything they have. So people with wealth and power always have different reasons. People who have no power have different reasons. In the time of the Holy Prophet ﷺ and other prophets, powerful people in the time of Hazrat Musa, Hazrat Isa, the rabbis, they did not have to submit to Hazrat Isa, or we lose everything we have. So in the time of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, so many people had power and they did not submit. Bani Israel, even the Quraysh, Abu Sufyan and Abu Jahl, and they all were powerful. And they said, what if we accept this orphan, this man, Yatim, Muhammad ﷺ, he was an orphan. If we admit, then we have to submit to him. So when authority comes, people don't submit. All of those people were calling the Holy Prophet truthful and trustworthy. But as soon as he said he's a messenger from God, he said, oh, so he's an authority above us? We will not accept an authority above us. Everyone used to seek help from Imam Ali. Ya Ali, help me this, in everything, in every way, all Muslims. As soon as the Holy Prophet said, Man kunta mawla fahada Ali mawla, authority, he's an authority over you. He said, we will not accept Ali. Why did we become Muslim? We want to be, we want to have authority as well. So, so authority sometimes, when people lose, they will not submit. One last question.
Okay, the last question here is, do the believers of other books have the concept of accountability in their religion?
So they do have the concept of accountability, but not necessarily like ours, like in depth, about the hereafter, about Sirat, Mizan, like the details that the Holy Quran has given. Quran has over 2,000 verses about the hereafter. And then we have so many hadiths about the hereafter. Our ulama have written detailed books on Ma'ad, about purgatory, about Barzakh, while I have not seen, so they do have concept of accountability and, like good, be good, to do good, to not do sins. And they do have the concept of paradise and hell and heaven. But the Christians, for example, say that so long as you believe in the Jesus or Jesus Christ, then you will be forgiven. So you have to try and be good, but you'll be forgiven all your sins because just so long as you believe there'll be no accountability. So we have similar things, but we're not like that. So Iman is the most important thing, faith, and then to be good. So Inna ladina amanu wa amilu salihat. So the ones who believe and do good. So believe is the first thing, and then doing good. So others have similar things. Many good things are very common between all religions. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Aga.
وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. في معنى